Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 36. The Perks of the Inner Sect. Half a month passed, during which Meng Hao spent most of his time sitting cross-legged in the sect's magic pavilion, studying the ancient records. Now he had a much deeper understanding of the state of Jiao and the southern domain. He had even discovered a hand-drawn map of the sprawling lands of South Heaven, which showed the Great Tang in the eastern lands, the northern reaches with its Chongdi flutes, the barbarian western lands, and of course the southern domain, where he was currently located. The whole world was neatly displayed on the map, and its image was now burned into Meng Hao's brain. The southern domain comprised a vast section of the lands of South Heaven, whereas the state of Jiao was just a tiny dot on its perimeter. The southern domain is so big that it could hold thousands of the state of Jiao. He looked out at the blue sky outside the magic pavilion, his eyes filled with a fascinated look. So it turns out that traveling to the Great Tang in the eastern lands isn't that simple. You have to cross the Milky Way Sea. After a while, Meng Hao looked back down at the map, looking at all the four major regions of the lands of South Heaven. The eastern lands and the northern reaches formed a subcontinent, separated from which by a large ocean were the western barbarian lands and the southern domain, which formed another subcontinent. When the sun began to fall behind the western mountains, and dusk approached, Meng Hao rubbed his eyes, returned the map to its place, and left the magic pavilion. He looked off into the distance toward the east for a while, then turned and headed back to his inner sect Immortal's Cave. Inside the Immortal's Cave, the luminescent pearls inlaid into the ceiling emitted a soft light onto the light green walls. There were 5 stone rooms, and a gurgling spirit spring, filling the cave with dense spiritual energy. This was a perk available only to disciples of the inner sect. Meng Hao entered and sat cross-legged onto a slab of white jade. It was not made of spirit stone, but meditating upon it helped one's mind to be clear, and was a relatively rare treasure. This also was something only for inner sect disciples. Only inner sect disciples can truly be considered members of the Reliance sect, thought Meng Hao, quietly looking around. The light green stone walls were carved with various birds and beasts, each of which seemed to be filled with deep meaning. Even looking at them left one feeling refined. These are very different perks from those in the outer sect. This is in order to emphasize the outstanding qualities of inner sect disciples. Just like in the mortal world, there is a division of layers. By struggling, one can surpass the outer sect. After that, if one wishes to become exalted, one must become stronger. Soon, dusk fell, and then Meng Hao heard a respectful voice from outside. Elder brother Meng, Li Fuguei from the foot of the mountain requests an audience. It was the voice of a boy, a servant. After Meng Hao had joined the inner sect, this boy had been assigned to help him care for his daily affairs. This was yet another perk of life in the inner sect. At first, Meng Hao had a hard time getting used to it. He had never had someone waiting upon him before. But when he saw elder brother Chen's servant helping him, it was easier to accept. However, he still held firm to his desire to grow stronger. Only the strong can have power over others, and prevent others from controlling them. The law of the cultivation world and rules of the Reliance sect were the same. It was not reasonable or fair, but it existed, and that was the way of life. Existence was truth. The world is fundamentally unreasonable, and naturally, there is no true fairness. Send him in, said Meng Hao coolly. Filled with reverence, the young servant complied. After being assigned to wait upon Meng Hao, his very life belonged to him. Shortly thereafter, Fatty entered, clicking his teeth and striding with long steps. This was not his first time to visit, but rather his third. Every time he came, he was filled with excitement. This was not a place outer sect disciples could visit without the consent of the person they called upon. The young servant led Fatty in respectfully. Fatty looked around, rubbing his hands along various items in wonder, even the white jade slab that Meng Hao sat on. It's not your first time here, said Meng Hao with a laugh, watching him. Meng Hao, this place is just too amazing. Every time I come, I just can't control myself. The Immortal's Cave of an Inner Sect Disciple. It's a place of legend. You know, after the last time I came here, a bunch of outer sect disciples crowded around me asking all sorts of questions. I'm important now. His body trembled, and it took a moment for him to stop thinking about it. He sat down in front of Meng Hao. If you'd like, I can request for Wang Tungfei's Immortal's Cave to be given to you. That would be incredible, said Fatty, looking excited, but at the same time a bit shy. Jiao Hai, said Meng Hao coolly. He waved his right hand, and the main door opened. The young servant rushed in and gave Meng Hao a deep salute. He looked to be about 14 or 15, close to Fatty's age. He had delicate features, and had only arrived on the mountain recently. It was said he was from the same village as Little Tiger, and that his family was rich. Take my spirit tablet to the cave dispensing pavilion and retrieve the jade slip to Wang Tungfei's Immortal's Cave. He waved his hand, and a white jade slip flew out into the young servant's hand. The young servant accepted the assignment, then left with a respectful expression on his face. Meng Hao, when are you going to come down off the mountain? Asked Fatty eagerly. I promised the outer sect disciples you would go to inspect them. You can't go back on your word, I promised them. Grandmaster Ouyang said that I would preside over the next pill distribution day, he said with a smile. I believe that would be the day after tomorrow. The two of them had entered the sect together, 3 years ago. A deep friendship had long since grown between the two of them. Great, the day after tomorrow it is. Oh, right, our business has been doing well in the past half-month. I already separated out your 80%. He handed a bag of holding to Meng Hao, looking pleased with himself. It seemed he too understood the meaning of the Reliance sect. With Meng Hao to rely on, who in the outer sect would dare to even say one wrong word to him? Even better, the beautiful female disciples of the outer sect had begun to fawn over him until he fairly floated in the air. For the moment, Fatty was quite popular. Has Xianxia caused you any problems recently? Asked Meng Hao suddenly, his eyes flashing. Nobody has seen that bastard recently, replied Fatty, his voice becoming grave. I've assigned a disciple to do some spying for me, and he said that Xianxia sits in secluded meditation all day. He never comes out. Just be careful, he warned, and not for the first time. If anything happens, snap the message token I gave you. Soon, the young servant Jiao Hai returned with the jade slip to Wang Tungfei's Immortal's Cave. Meng Hao gave it to Fatty. The two of them laughed and chatted deep into the night. It seemed Fatty didn't want to leave. In fact, he seemed to be growing more excited. Meng Hao was surprised at this, but when he remembered what day it was, and laughed. Today is the day medicinal fruits are distributed in the inner sect, said Meng Hao. Fatty licked his lips and nodded, his heart filled with envy at the differences between the inner and outer sect disciples. Every month medicinal fruits were distributed, a special type of spiritual fruit infused with medicinal pills. The fruit itself tasted like a medicinal pill, but was much more effective than ordinary medicinal pills. Inner sect disciples received the fruits once per month. After the time it takes an incense stick to burn, the young servant Jiao Hai entered. He actually despised Fatty, but didn't show even the slightest hint of it on his face. In his hands he carried the medicinal fruits, wrapped up in a large green leaf. A delicate aroma wafted out from it, causing Jiao Hai to swallow deeply. He put the fruits down and then left. When the large leaf was removed, the medicinal fragrance filled the air. Inside the leaf were 2 small, semi-transparent, light red fruits. They seemed so delicate that they might break if you touched them. Inside each one could just barely be seen a medicinal pill. Fatty's eyes went wide. He had never eaten medicinal fruit before, but had heard it mentioned recently by some outer sect disciples. After making some inquiries, he had discovered the distribution date, and so had hurried eagerly to visit Meng Hao. He picked up one of the fruits and put it into his mouth. He bit down, then swallowed, and a delicious flavor filled his mouth. Then, a hot sensation filled his head and spread out through his whole body. Amazing, amazing. I must be the first outer sect disciple to ever eat a medicinal fruit. When word gets out, the girls will be envious to death. Everyone will be envious of Master Fatty's good fortune. It suddenly seemed as if he had remembered something, and he snapped his mouth shut, not letting any of the fragrant aroma escape. Using his hands, he signaled to Meng Hao that he needed to leave, then ran off. I have proof, he thought. I have to find some of those female disciples and let them smell it. The more he thought about it, the more excited he got, and he raced down the mountain even faster. Fatty's clever plan was obvious, causing Meng Hao to laugh. He slowly placed the remaining medicinal fruit into his mouth. It tasted delicious, filled with dense medicinal flavor. This is something else that inner sect disciples. As he ate the medicinal fruit, he sighed. This life was not something that outer sect disciples could enjoy. If he wanted to, he could simply make a gesture, and any of the beautiful female disciples would instantly become devoted to him. Soon, 2 days had passed, and pill distribution day arrived. Meng Hao walked out of his immortal's cave, followed closely by the young servant Zhao Hai. In his hand he carried a purple bag of holding, which was filled with spirit stones and medicinal pills to be distributed. A mountain breeze welcomed the dawn as Meng Hao descended the mountain. Along the way, the outer sect disciples he ran into would look at him in surprise, then stop and give him a deep salute with clasped hands. Greetings, Elder Brother Meng. Elder Brother Meng is as elegant as ever. I haven't seen you in many days. Junior sister has missed you. Greetings, Elder Brother Meng. Your latent talent is spectacular, your cultivation base astonishing. You will definitely be a pillar of the sect. Amidst all the flattery, Meng Hao walked along until he reached the square, which was already filled with a good number of disciples. Catching sight of him, they saluted, and then the air filled with their flattering words. He nodded, smiling, then leaped up, carrying Zhao Hai with him onto the platform. This was not his first time here, but it was his first time to distribute medicinal pills. His gaze swept across the crowd. Every single person's face was filled with reverent devotion. Gradually, Meng Hao's face grew distracted, and he thought back to his first pill distribution day, and then to the time Wang Tengfei had humiliated him. Many memories flitted through his mind. Finally, he heaved a deep sigh, and said, "Sound the bells." Chapter 37. Water and ink. In the evening the bells rang out, reverberating both in Meng Hao's heart and throughout the Reliance sect. Soon, Meng Hao could see countless disciples hurrying forward. Before long, the square was packed. As the disciples entered, they looked at Meng Hao in shock, then saluted. Fatty stood in the crowd, looking pleased, filing away at his teeth with his flying sword. He was surrounded by a group of fawning disciples. So Elder Brother Meng is distributing the medicinal pill today. I remember back when he was an outer sect disciple like us, but now he's a member of the inner sect. Elder Brother Meng is scholarly and refined. I heard that he used to be a scholar of high rank, but he cared more about cultivation, so he quit and joined the Reliance sect. Now that you mention it, I remember the first time I saw Elder Brother Meng those years ago. I could tell that he wasn't ordinary. During his whole fight with Wang Tengfei, I knew that Elder Brother Meng would achieve victory. The buzz of conversation filled the air, eventually reaching Meng Hao's ears. He let out a dry cough. Even though it was a relatively quiet cough, it caused all the disciples in the square to suddenly go silent. They looked up at him respectfully. The morning sun shone down onto his silver robe, and he truly looked like a celestial being. Meng Hao caught sight of Ju Kai in the crowd. His face looked conflicted. Then Meng Hao caught sight of Samba Yin Qianlong, who gave him a forced smile. He also saw the other Qi condensation 4th level disciples whom he recognized from that day. When his gaze fell upon them, their faces filled with ingratiating looks. He even saw Cao Yang, standing there trembling. "Today, I shall preside over pill distribution," said Meng Hao. He was a scholar, so he had no need to prepare words. He just spoke naturally. When he spoke, his words carried force, piercing into the hearts of the onlookers. "Fellow disciples, please devote yourself to cultivation, and eventually you will pass the 6th level. I look forward to that day, when the Reliance inner sect has one more member." The force of his words came not from his cultivation base, but rather his status as an inner sect disciple. We will remember elder brother Meng's admonitions. Several people below spoke out, faces filled with emotion, as if they had just heard the voice of heaven. One after another, they saluted Meng Hao. Soon everyone was repeating the words, until the whole square spoke together in harmony. Meng Hao took the bag of holding from the young servant at his side, opened it, and waved his sleeve. Medicinal pills and spirit stones shot out to everyone. After that, his right hand flashed over the bag of holding, then held up a milky white medicinal pill. It emanated white aura and a fragrant aroma. It seemed as if it contained the glow of dawn. It's a white spirit pill. That pill is extraordinarily effective for anyone of the 4th level of qi condensation or lower. They haven't distributed one for a long time. Finally one appears. Soon, everyone in the square below was breathing heavily, staring at the medicinal pill in Meng Hao's hand. His eyes scanned the crowd. Fatty was smiling. This pill wasn't anything rare as far as he was concerned. He already had a few in his bag of holding, which Meng Hao had given him. This pill is extraordinary. All of you must surely know that I plan to give this only to a suitable disciple. And yet, I, Meng Hao, keep old friendships in mind. I just caught sight of an old friend, so I shall bestow the pill to him. His gaze fell onto Cao Yang, who suddenly began to tremble. Meng Hao flicked his right hand, and the pill shot forth. I'm finished, thought Cao Yang, looking like he was about to cry. I'll be recuperating from the injuries for months, he wailed inside, and now he knew that Meng Hao could hold a grudge. Even though he had become an inner sect disciple, he had not forgotten about all the things that had happened before. As the lights in the square faded, Meng Hao flicked his sleeve and left, not staying behind to watch the fighting break out. Fatty ran over to follow him, his face flushed. He glared at the young servant Zhao Hai, motioning for him to step back a distance. It seemed he was worried the boy might replace him. He walked next to Meng Hao. Elder brother Meng, he said with anticipation, why don't we take a stroll around the outer sect? Thinking back to how he had done the same thing with elder sister Shu so many years ago, Meng Hao nodded his head with a smile. The two of them walked forward, with Zhao Hai following in the rear, looking irritated. Not long after leaving the square, they saw Ju Kai hurrying to catch up with them. Greetings, elder brother Meng, he said, his expression somewhat perturbed. He had offended Meng Hao more than once, and had assumed that upon joining the inner sect, he would show more restraint. But upon seeing Cao Yang's fate, he was nervous, and so rushed over. Meng Hao looked him over, but didn't say anything. Fatty took a step forward and said loudly, "What do you want?" A few days ago, I, Ju, came across a treasured item. As soon as I saw it, I could tell that it was destined for elder brother Meng. Please, accept my gift. Biting his tongue, he pulled out a bag of holding from within his robe and presented it to Meng Hao. Fatty gave a cold harumph and grabbed it, then handed it to Meng Hao with a wide smile. Meng Hao accepted it and glanced over its contents. Then he nodded to Ju Kai, turned, and walked off, his expression as cool as the clouds in the sky. Ju Kai watched on helplessly, sighing in his heart. I'm not worthy to be an inner sect disciple, perhaps these items will leave you dissatisfied. As Meng Hao walked away, Yin Qianlong, off in the distance, let out a sigh. With a smile on his face, he hurried forward. He too said that he had found some items which were destined to be Meng Hao's. He also offered up a bag of holding, inside of which were 50 spirit stones. Meng Hao accepted it with a slight frown. We're both fellow disciples, he said. The grievances of the past are not worth keeping track of. There's no need to act like this. Upon hearing this, Yin Qianlong's heart thumped, and he understood Meng Hao's true meaning. Inwardly cursing Ju Kai for giving more, he clenched his jaw and produced another bag of holding, whereupon Meng Hao nodded. As he walked, Meng Hao met more people who had offended him in the past, and they all acted similarly. Soon he had 10 new bags of holding. What do you think? Said Fatty, looking pleased. I handled things pretty well, didn't I? I found all of them earlier and gave them a bit of coaching. I told them that one must offer up a bit of blood now to avoid trouble in the future. Meng Hao laughed and shook his head. He had sensed something odd about the goings-on and had guessed that Fatty must have been up to something over the past half-month. What about that 5th-level disciple who tried to kill you that day? Asked Meng Hao. Oh, him. I used the jade slip you gave me to make him go see the minister of the outer sect, who arranged for him to go out into the wild mountains to catch some demonic beasts. He can't return until he gets 100. As far as Fatty was concerned, anyone who offended him would have to pay the price. Just don't do something publicly that could box you into a corner, said Meng Hao, his eyes flashing and his voice low. I understand, said Fatty in a similarly low voice. It's taken care of. Ju Kai and Yin Qianlong will get rid of him for good. They looked at each other, then laughed. They never brought up the matter again. After making a circle around the outer sect, and having been greeted by many disciples, they finally reached the pill cultivation workshop. Meng Hao paused for a moment to look at it, then a smile broke out on his face and he entered. When the middle-aged man who ran the workshop saw Meng Hao, he stood up. Greetings, elder brother Meng. Meng Hao smiled and nodded his head, glancing around at all the medicinal pills. Don't worry, elder brother Meng, said the middle-aged man. Junior brother Li Fugue is taking care of the pill workshop. Business is good. I definitely won't give any other disciples a chance to buy medicinal pills. He thumped his palm onto his chest. Fatty beamed with joy. Previously, he had given the middle-aged cultivator a bag of holding when no one was looking. Soon, the man had grown accustomed to this. Although the medicinal pills here belonged to the sect and weren't personal property, the man wasn't opposed to making a bit of profit of his own. Thanks to Fatty's anticipation and stubbornness, it wasn't until midday that Meng Hao was able to satisfy him. They walked around the entire outer sect until everyone had seen them together. Finally, after much begging and pleading, they went to the treasure pavilion. The shrewd-looking man at the treasure pavilion had been waiting outside for some time. When he saw Meng Hao approaching, he made a long, grand salute, then in a loud, clear voice said, Treasure Pavilion disciple Sun Qiandi gives greetings to Elder Brother Meng. Elder Brother Meng is a dragon among men, powerful and imposing beyond the ordinary. The man was not very educated, and his words were a bit over the top. His expression was one of excitement, but inside he was a bit worried, although only he knew that. He feared that Meng Hao would bring up the matter of him cheating him all those years back. He glanced at the eager-looking Fatty. Fatty cleared his throat. My friend here wants me to go in to take a treasure, he said, sounding a bit embarrassed. If it breaks any rules, you can place the blame on him. Meng Hao was a loss for word. Finally, he went in with Fatty to inspect the treasure pavilion. After a while, they left, despite Fatty's pleas to stay. By the time Meng Hao arrived back at the East Mountain, the sun was beginning to set. He sat down on a boulder outside the Immortal's cave, thinking about the day's events. Now he had an even deeper understanding of what it meant to be a member of the inner sect. As evening fell, Meng Hao looked out at the rosy sky. Then he noticed that off in the distance, a woman approached. She looked like some sort of celestial being, wearing a silver robe, with long black hair and a pale face that was beautiful even though she wore no makeup whatsoever. Her face, though cold, seemed to Meng Hao to contain something delicate and touching. Elder Sister Shu, said Meng Hao, cupping his hands in greeting. Congratulations, you've become a member of the inner sect. Just like her name, Elder Sister Shu was cold and cheerless. That was her personality, and yet, she didn't treat everyone coldly. For example, upon hearing her young servant mention Meng Hao, she had come here to see him. Meng Hao smiled, standing next to her. Their long robes rippled in the mountain breeze. Today I went to the pill cultivation workshop and traded for another cosmetic cultivation pill. He lifted it up and handed it to her. She said nothing, looking at the pill for a while, then eventually accepting it. She stood there with him, silently looking off into the rosy horizon. She was incredibly beautiful, seemingly flawless, like jade. The glow of the setting sun reflected off her, increasing her beauty. Time seemed to come to a standstill. As they stood there on the East Mountain, their shadows merged together in the evening sun, like ink blending with water. It was something which would last for an eternity. The evening sunlight slowly faded past the horizon, and then the moon peeked out. Finally, Elder Sister Shu turned and began to walk off. She had only taken 5 steps before she stopped. I went to the pill cultivation workshop. The cosmetic cultivation pill you gave me before wasn't purchased by you." With that, she left, not looking back. Meng Hao stared in shock, and wasn't even able to react until some time had passed. He scratched his head. His eyes gradually filled with light. He had never imagined that something like this would happen. And yet, it seemed it had. Chapter 38. Qi Condensation Manual of the Sublime Spirit Scripture. 2 months passed in the twinkling of an eye. Meng Hao had already been a member of the inner sect for an entire season. He did not continue to visit the outer sect often. Like a fish in water, Fatty had grown accustomed to surviving on his own, and was quite at ease. Most of Meng Hao's time was spent in the magic pavilion. One day, he sat there cross-legged, a calm expression on his face as he read a bamboo text. He raised his right hand and began to make incantation gestures, causing a magical light to circulate around it and cast flickering shadows onto his face. A water globe appeared, but then unexpectedly transformed into mist and dissipated into the surroundings. Meng Hao frowned, putting down the bamboo text. He reached into his robe and pulled out a glowing jade slip. It was pure white and blurry inside, as if it were filled with mist. A closer inspection revealed that the surface was actually translucent, like crystal. "Chen Fan, Shu Qing, Meng Hao. Come to the main temple hall on the East Mountain." The words were spoken by a dignified voice which transmitted out from within the jade slip. It was easily identifiable as belonging to sect leader He Luo Hua. Meng Hao straightened up the bamboo texts, stood and strode silently out of the main door of the magic pavilion, making his way toward the top of the East Mountain. At almost the same time as he walked out, 2 figures shot toward the peak. One had a warm, gentle face, filled with righteousness, Chen Fan. The other was beautiful but cold, elder sister Shu Qing. Shu Qing cast a glance at Meng Hao. This was the first time they had seen each other since that evening the previous month. The 3 sped toward the peak of the East Mountain, eventually arriving at the main temple hall. It had an ancient feel, the rich ornamentation giving the feeling that it had seen many ages pass. This was a very important place to the Reliance sect, a place that throughout the generations, only inner sect disciples could visit. Within the main temple hall were 9 statues. The foremost one was of an old man, his expression not one of anger, yet still filled with might. His dark eyes seemed to shine with life. His left hand was lifted up in front of him, his chin raised as if he was staring down his nose at all creation. He seemed to emanate a sort of indescribable, domineering air. Behind him, 8 statues were arranged neatly, all of them possessing the demeanor of transcendent beings. Meng Hao had visited this place during his first 7 days in the inner sect. He had kowtowed before these statues, and knew well that the calm, powerful old man was none other than Patriarch Reliance. The other statues were the other patriarchs of the Reliance sect. Sect leader He Luo Hua stood beneath the statues, his back toward Meng Hao and the others as they entered. He stared at the statues as if he were in a trance. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Next to him was Grand Elder Ouyang. He nodded to the 3 of them, a solemn expression on his face. "Pay homage to the patriarch," he said, his voice profound. Meng Hao, Shu Qing, and Chen Fan bowed deeply to Patriarch Reliance, their faces somber. "I joined the sect when Patriarch Reliance had been missing for 100 years, said He Luo Hua. At that time, the Reliance sect was still in its glory days. He sighed and turned around. Meng Hao, Chen Fan, and even Shu Qing gazed at him with shining eyes. He was silent a moment, before slowly continuing, "You have read about Patriarch Reliance in the ancient records, and know how glorious our Reliance sect used to be. We even had a complete understanding of the 3 levels of foundation establishment. I've called you here today to explain the complete truth. The former glory of the Reliance sect was all due to Patriarch Reliance. Because of his cultivation base, he dominated the entire state of Zhao. His reputation even shook the southern domain. All of that was because of one of the manuals of the Sublime Spirit Scripture." As He Luo Hua spoke, Chen Fan's eyes began to shine brightly. Even Shu Qing's grew sharp. Only Meng Hao stared blankly. He had no idea what the Sublime Spirit Scripture was. "The Qi Condensation Manual," said Chen Fan lightly. He was a senior disciple of the inner sect, and knew many secrets. Other things he had worked out through speculation. The Sublime Spirit Scripture is one of the 3 great classic scriptures in the lands of South Heaven, continued He Luohua softly. It was passed down through the generations since ancient times. Originally it was comprised of 7 manuals, but most have been lost. One of them was the Qi Condensation Manual, which describes how to establish a flawless foundation. The Foundation Establishment Manual describes the method to form a purple core, not a crimson or mixed core. The Core Formation Manual can enable one to develop a 4-colored nascent form. In other words, each manual enables one to reach the strongest stage. That year, Patriarch Reliance obtained the Qi Condensation Manual. The reason the heir to the Wang clan joined the Reliance sect was because of the Sublime Spirit Scripture's Qi Condensation Manual. Meng Hao's eyes glittered, and his heart began to race. He had heard elder brother Chen speak of the different levels of foundation establishment. Now that he knew how powerful this magic was that Patriarch Reliance had obtained, he understood why Wang Tongfei had joined the Reliance sect. If I could obtain it. The strong desire in his heart suddenly began to burn even hotter. Sadly, even I have never laid eyes on this Qi Condensation Manual, let alone others, said He Luohua. The scripture was not handed down. It exists only in the memory of the Patriarch. Meng Hao remained silent, and Chen Fan's face flashed with realization. Xu Qing raised her head to look at the statue of Patriarch Reliance. Silence reigned in the main temple hall. 400 years have passed, and everyone in the outside world assumes that the Patriarch died during his meditation. Only myself and a few others know that the Patriarch is absolutely not dead. As his words drifted out into Meng Hao's ears, they seemed to transform into a thunderous roar. 400 years ago, the Patriarch's cultivation base had reached the late nascent soul stage. And yet, he was reaching the end of his life. In order to break through to the fabled spirit severing stage, one must be at least 1,000 years old. If not, how can he defy the heavens to sever his spirit? The Patriarch chose to meditate in seclusion, in order to sever his spirit body and be reborn. It was a meditation of 400 years. When he went into meditation 400 years ago, the Patriarch left a command. Every 100 years, he would send out some pieces of Vorpal jade, formed from his own blood. Then, the outstanding members of the current generation of inner sect disciples could use the Vorpal jade to enter his meditation zone. By kindling the Qi and blood inside the Vorpal jade, they could have a chance, if lucky, to gain enlightenment of the knowledge he permeated throughout the area. Knowledge of the Sublime Spirit Scripture. He Luohua's words echoed out. Meng Hao lifted his head up, as did the others. Success is success. Failure is failure. If things had stayed the same, surely a disciple would have succeeded already. But 200 years ago, the Patriarch experienced an accident in his cultivation. He almost lost his life. Afterwards, the chances of enlightenment in his meditation zone grew weak, and the restrictive spells stronger. He didn't send any more Vorpal jades out until 5 years ago. When he did, he sent out 3 pieces. 3 pieces of Vorpal jade indicate that 3 individuals may enter. It also reveals how powerful the restrictive spells are in the Patriarch's meditation zone, and means that there are only 3 areas where enlightenment may occur. He Luohua's voice reverberated throughout the main hall. He flicked his right sleeve, and 3 blood-red streaks shot toward Meng Hao and the others, to stop floating in front of them. They were jade-smooth blood crystals, also known as Vorpal jade. You 3 are the only disciples of the inner sect, and therefore I bestow these Vorpal jades to you. Whether or not you gain the enlightenment of the Sublime Spirit Scripture will depend on your luck. With that, he flicked his sleeve again, and the statue of Patriarch Reliance began to hum. Its eyes shone with boundless radiance, and a vortex began to form in front of him. Enter, said He Luohua, his voice sounding out like thunder. I wish you luck in enlightenment. Meng Hao and the others seemed to transform into auroras as they gripped their pieces of Vorpal jade and shot into the vortex, disappearing inside. Outside, the vortex remained, but without a Vorpal jade, no one, not even a cultivator at the nascent soul stage, could enter it. Looking up at the vortex, Grand Elder Ouyang quietly said, who knows which of them will acquire the Sublime Spirit Scripture, Or, perhaps they will all come up empty-handed. It depends on personal fortune, there's no use in thinking too much about it. He Luohua sat down cross-legged next to him and began to meditate. When Meng Hao entered the vortex, a blinding light appeared in front of his eyes which forced him to close them. A rumbling roar sounded in his ears, and then he heard strange shrieks and screams coming from all directions. After what seemed like years, he felt his body suddenly tremble, and then the sounds ceased. The shrieking turned into silence. He opened his eyes to find himself standing on top of a sacrificial altar that was several meters tall. He looked around. The place was enormous. Up above was black earth, dotted with small crystals that shone like stars, casting a dim light on the surroundings. Nothing was very clear, as if everything were covered with gauze. Various buildings rose up out of the fog. How desolate! It seems like no one has been here for hundreds of years. It was Chen Fan's voice, drifting from some distance away. Eventually, he appeared, walking through the fog. In the direction from which he came could be seen another altar, several meters tall. The soil up above has restrictive spells cast on it. These are the sect catacombs. Xu Qing appeared from another direction. Dressed in her silver robe, she appeared matchlessly beautiful. I entered the sect earlier than both of you, said Chen Fan. Once I performed guard duty at the main temple hall, so I know a few secrets that you two don't. These are definitely the Reliance sect catacombs. Directly above is the outer sect. Meng Hao walked off the altar to stand next to Chen Fan and Xu Qing. Looking around at the hazy images of buildings around them, he could see plenty of withered plants and flowers. Everything was deathly still. This fog is a restrictive spell, said Meng Hao with a frown. It's making everything appear to be black and white. No color whatsoever. Precisely, said Chen Fan with a serious look. Don't attempt to touch it. Because of the Patriarch's weak state, he's lost control of it. Let us use our Vorpal Jades to find our places of enlightenment. He looked at them. We don't know how much time we will have to gain enlightenment. Let's all wait for each other, then leave together. Junior Sister Xu, Junior Brother Meng, I wish you success. He cast his spiritual power into the Vorpal Jade, whereupon it emitted a blood-red glow and began to drift away. Chen Fan followed, soon disappearing into the distance. Xu Qing nodded at Meng Hao, then followed the blood-red glow of her Vorpal Jade in a different direction. Meng Hao looked around, then was about to activate his own Vorpal Jade when suddenly, a shrill shriek rang out. It grew closer and closer, until it seemed to be only about 30 meters away. Chapter 39. Patriarch Reliance. Meng Hao's expression changed. He suddenly saw the fog roiling, and then about 30 meters away a shrieking man appeared. He wore a long tattered robe as he charged toward Meng Hao. He emanated a fierce heat, which transformed into a ruthless killing aura. Seeing him approach, Meng Hao retreated as fast as possible. This turn of events had happened too quickly. The figure advanced rapidly, and in the blink of an eye it was only 9 meters away. Suddenly, it caught sight of the Vorpal Jade in his hand, and its eyes filled with dread and fear. Meng Hao's heart churned. He poured the spiritual power from within his body into the Vorpal Jade, and suddenly it began to glow blood-red. It illuminated the man in the dilapidated robe, allowing Meng Hao to see him clearly. He was middle-aged, his body gaunt, like some sort of evil spirit. Blood-curdling screams shot out of his mouth as he retreated. Moving with incredible speed, he disappeared into the fog. Sweat broke out on Meng Hao's forehead, and he took a deep breath. The feeling the middle-aged man gave him was the same feeling he got from Grand Elder Ouyang, boundless and majestic. Don't tell me he was a cultivator of the Foundation establishment stage. Meng Hao hesitated, remaining on guard. He followed the direction of the blood-red light, moving forward carefully. After about half an hour, he stopped in shock. Several figures had appeared, and each of them seemed to have a cultivation base equal to Grand Elder Ouyang's. Some even seemed to be as powerful as sect leader He Luohua. Could they be automatons? Upon closer inspection, The figures didn't actually seem to be alive. They floated around him in circles, none of them approaching him, seemingly terrified of his vorpal jade. Time passed enough for an incense stick to burn, and they slowly disappeared. Meng Hao continued forward numbly, his breathing agitated, a blank look in his eyes. This, he murmured. Ahead of him was a mountain, approximately 300 meters tall. An ordinary mountain would not cause Meng Hao to act in such a way. This mountain was made of spirit stones. Countless spirit stones piled together to form a spirit stone mountain. Meng Hao had never seen so many spirit stones in his entire life. His head spun, and he unconsciously wanted to go take them, but after taking a single step forward, he stopped. The spirit stone mountain was gray in color and seemed to be covered with a fine mist. It was a restrictive spell which prevented anything from touching it. He struggled for some time, not quite willing to give up. When he reached a position about 60 meters from the spirit stone mountain, he suddenly felt a fierce sense of imminent danger. Looking at the mountain with a sigh, he stopped in place. He knew that if he got too close, his body and soul would be reduced to ashes. At a loss for a long moment, he turned his head and reluctantly left the spirit stone mountain behind. More time passed as he followed the blood-red glow, enough for an incense stick to burn, and soon the hazy image of a building appeared in the fog ahead of him. It had a courtyard, filled with withered plants and weeds. A stone sat in the middle of the courtyard, about half the size of a person. It was the only thing in sight that was neither black nor white, nor was there any fog visible near it. The vorpal jade floated toward the large stone, then stopped above it. The blood-red glow began to fade. Meng Hao walked forward and inspected the area around the stone. This must be one of the areas for enlightenment. He sat down cross-legged onto the stone and looked at the vorpal jade floating in front of him. His eyes began to gleam. Throughout all these years, many people have come here, and none have successfully achieved enlightenment. When the blood-red glow of the vorpal jade fades, it means the time to attempt enlightenment has arrived. Meng Hao frowned. A strong desire burned in his heart to acquire the secrets of the Qi condensation manual. Originally, Wang Tengfei should have been given this opportunity. But Meng Hao knew that his latent talent was simply ordinary, and he had little chance of success. He didn't allow the vorpal jade to fade, but instead looked up at it, a strange light shining in his eyes. After a bit of time passed, he clenched his jaw, then grabbed it stubbornly. This time, I don't care what happens. I will achieve the enlightenment of the sublime spirit scripture. Determination filled his voice as he slapped his bag of holding and produced the copper mirror. Grabbing a handful of spirit stones, he prepared to begin the duplication process. Meng Hao had been a member of the inner sect for a month. Inner sect disciples received significantly more spirit stones than outer sect disciples. Combine that with his profits from the shop as well as the outer sect disciples who were trying to ingratiate themselves to him, it ensured that his bag of holding contained many spirit stones. But suddenly, his expression changed as he found that the spirit stones distributed by the sect were incapable of duplicating the vorpal jade. It wasn't that the copper mirror had lost its efficacy, but rather that there simply weren't enough spirit stones. Even mid-grade spirit stones were useless. He stared at the vorpal jade for a while before suddenly pulling out 7 or 8 of the extraordinarily large spirit stones he had left. He hesitated for some time, then ground his teeth. Eyes growing red, he put one of the spirit stones down onto the mirror, and before he could even put down another piece, the copper mirror began to glow with a blinding light, and instantly, 15 pieces of vorpal jade appeared. Meng Hao stared, dumbfounded. Originally, he had assumed he would need multiple spirit stones to make it work. But then he ended up with 15 of the blood crystals. These were blood crystals, congealed from Patriarch Reliance's own blood. Seeing 15 of them appear left Meng Hao stupefied. What kind of spirit stones are these? He sat in a daze, thinking back to how he had used 2,000 of them that time, and his heart ached. These large spirit stones were definitely some type of extraordinary object. For now, the most important thing to Meng Hao was the sublime spirit scripture. He clenched his jaw and set aside the matter of the 2,000 spirit stones. Extending a blood crystal, he caused it to fade. As it did so, the blood-red glow settled around Meng Hao and an indistinct voice could be heard. He slipped into a dreamlike trance, unaware of the passing of time. At this same moment, Xu Qing and Chen Fan, in their respective enlightenment areas, were also surrounded by the blood-red glow. Their latent talent was beyond ordinary, so their chances of achieving enlightenment were somewhat greater. In Patriarch Reliance's meditation zone, everything was based on latent talent. So-called luck is the same. After an indeterminable period of time passed, the red glow around Meng Hao faded, and he began to regain his senses. He seemed to be somewhat at a loss. After some time passed, he had completely recovered, and yet his mind was blank. Not even a scrap of information from the sublime spirit scripture was there. He sighed, having anticipated this all along. He took out another blood crystal and continued to seek enlightenment. Time passed, and even after having used up 14 blood crystals, he still had not succeeded. His heart ached, and he wasn't sure if he should continue. Gnashing his teeth, he pulled out another large spirit stone and duplicated more of the Vorpal jade blood crystals. Once again, he activated the blood-red glow, which then covered his body as he began to seek enlightenment. By this time, the blood-red glow surrounding Xu Qing and Chen Fan had faded. However, they did not rise, instead choosing to remain seated in meditation, not sure when enlightenment might occur. As for Meng Hao, he seemed to have gone mad, continuously activating blood crystals, trying again and again to achieve enlightenment. Anyone who saw this scene would surely go crazy with jealousy. After activating the 27th blood crystal, Meng Hao suddenly heard what sounded like a voice murmuring next to his ear in the dreamlike trance world. He could clearly hear two words: sublime. Spirit. When Meng Hao opened his eyes, they were filled with determination. Without hesitation, he pulled out the 28th Vorpal jade blood crystal, and once again sought enlightenment. By this time, Xu Qing and Chen Fan had returned to the altar to wait for Meng Hao. They were a bit surprised when they didn't see Meng Hao, but they weren't sure which direction he had headed in, so they couldn't easily search for him. They decided to sit in front of the altar and wait for him. By the third day, they were beginning to grow impatient and also a bit worried. Of course, they did not even consider that he might have achieved enlightenment, but rather worried that some sort of accident had befallen him. Did something happen to junior brother Meng? Said Chen Fan worriedly. Xu Qing didn't respond, but she looked worried. After a bit of discussion, they decided to begin looking for him. Unfortunately, because of the frequent appearance of the automatons, their search went quite slowly. Meanwhile, Meng Hao sat, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot, murmuring to himself. His words made no sense, they seemed to simply express his desire for the sublime spirit scripture. He pulled out the 43rd blood crystal, and the thick, red glow again surrounded him. In fact, the area he was in never lacked the red glow. Meng Hao had gone all out in his search for enlightenment. If he ran low on blood crystals, he simply duplicated more. As of now, he could clearly hear the voice in his ear, but just couldn't commit it to memory. He could only continue on in another attempt. There was something that nobody, not Chen Fan or Xu Qing, nor frenzied Meng Hao, had noticed. After the blood crystal ceased to glow, it would transform into a barely discernible blood-red light, which would then enter into the ground and pass into a secret chamber below the catacombs. There, a withered body sat cross-legged, seemingly lifeless. The room was filled with the feeling of death. Every time one of the blood-red lights entered the room, the body would assimilate it, and begin to change slightly. By the time the third light entered the body, there seemed to be some shred of life in it. The light of life was dim, though, and the body was unable to do anything except sit there. This was Patriarch Reliance. The Vorpal jade blood crystals were congealed from his own blood, and contained his aura. After being activated, they would return to him, continuing his life. Without them, he would be thoroughly dead. Originally, he had planned to postpone his death in this fashion, until the very last spark of his ruthless and ambitious life was extinguished, whereupon he would pass into death. He was already in a state of despair. He spent most of his time in deep sleep, awaking only occasionally, and briefly, whereupon he would sink back into slumber. He had no energy to waste on superfluous matters. As for the Vorpal jade, this was an arrangement he had prepared many years ago. Were it not for them, he would have passed into death hundreds of years ago. These are the last 3 pieces of Vorpal jade. Now that they had returned, he had regained consciousness. He sighed and went back to sleep, knowing that he would probably never wake up again. And yet suddenly, a fourth blood-red light entered the secret chamber and fused with his body. He woke again, shocked. I am already out of Vorpal Jade. Could I have remembered incorrectly? Even as he talked to himself, a fifth blood-red light appeared, making its way into his body. He observed, dumbstruck, as a sixth, seventh, eighth blood-red light appeared. By the third day, countless blood-red lights had appeared, one after another, continuously fusing with his body. Patriarch Reliance's heart surged with excitement, and his face filled with hope. Suddenly, his eyes opened. Holy hell, these are clearly not my blood, but they are definitely my blood crystals. What's going on? What the hell is going on? Chapter 40. Sublime Spirit Scripture. At the same moment that Patriarch Reliance opened his eyes, Meng Hao activated the 50th Vorpal Jade blood crystal. His head vibrated violently, and a scriptural text floated around him. Each and every character of the scripture emitted a bright golden light which pierced through his body. It completely overpowered the blood-red glow, leaving behind a glowing golden aura. As the golden aura spread out, Meng Hao began to change. His core lake churned violently as it began to take on a golden hue. As the lake water became gold, a thunderous roar sounded out, transforming his entire body. His body filled with loud cracking sounds. His bones grew longer, his blood and flesh grew stronger. In an instant, he grew more powerful, both inside and outside. His chi vessels seemed to be as transparent as crystal, completely integrated into his physical body. His hair grew longer as he transitioned into a new state according to the mnemonics of the Sublime Spirit Scripture. More time passed, approximately 6 hours, and then another boom sounded out inside Meng Hao. When he opened his eyes, they shined with a golden light. Time passed, and the golden glow faded. He looked excited. Within his mind he could clearly see a mnemonic, branded indelibly onto his spirit. He understood every single line. This was the Sublime Spirit Scripture. This was something that could cause blood to spray like rain in the outside world. This was the Qi condensation manual that countless sects would fight like mad for. And here it was, inside Meng Hao's head. After the 6 hours of transformation, Meng Hao was still at the 6th level of Qi condensation. But as for his new cultivation method, it could be counted as one of the 3 best in all the lands of South Heaven. This good luck was something that even the disciples of the great clans and sects would have a hard time achieving. Using the cultivation method of this Qi condensation manual, if Meng Hao was able to reach the foundation establishment phase, then he would definitely be able to establish a flawless foundation. In addition, his spiritual power would be much deeper than that of his contemporaries. Perhaps it would not be the most powerful, but as time passed, the power would slowly accumulate, and by the time he reached the foundation establishment stage, like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon, he would have a flawless foundation rarely seen in the world. As of right now, if he ran into Wang Tungfei, he would not be put into the precarious position he had been that day. In fact, he could now simultaneously control 10 flying swords without losing any of their dexterity. His power had doubled. Filled with excitement, Meng Hao clenched his fists, his heart filling with intense longing. After a while he took a deep breath, descended from the stone slab, and walked off. At the moment, Patriarch Reliance was going wild with even more excitement than Meng Hao. Upon opening his eyes, he could see Meng Hao, as well as Chen Fan and Xu Qing. He waited eagerly for Meng Hao to produce another blood crystal, then watched in a daze as Meng Hao suddenly achieved enlightenment. Damn it! Damn it! I should never have placed the enlightenment field out there. No, no, no. If I didn't, how could I get the young pups to come here in the first place? But. Why did he have to gain enlightenment with only 50 blood crystals? 100 would be better, 200, at least 300. If there were 500, I wouldn't need to continue meditating here. Patriarch Reliance was filled with depression. This was his greatest hope, and he was watching it disappear before his eyes. Without blood crystals to replenish himself, he could only continue on wasting away. And yet he knew there was nothing he could do. I didn't do myself any favors that year. I closed myself up in here with no way out, and it's very difficult to transmit my voice out. As far as magic goes, I'm currently too weak to do much of anything. What to do? What to do? I have to think of something. His face grew anxious as he watched Meng Hao meet Xu Qing and Chen Fan out in the catacombs above the secret chamber. They proceeded toward the altar, clearly preparing to leave. If I caused all of the members of the cultivation world of the state of Zhao to come here, I could use the power of their cultivation bases to break me out of this meditation zone. If I can break out, then I can absorb their life force, then have a chance at my second severing. Patriarch Reliance gnashed his teeth, squeezing as much as he could out of his weak cultivation base, then slapping his right hand down onto the ground. It began to rumble. At that same moment, Meng Hao was trying to come up with an excuse for why he had gone missing for those few days, and why his body looked different. Chen Fan smiled and nodded, and Xu Qing, seeing that Meng Hao wasn't harmed, didn't say anything. The three of them stepped up onto the altar, getting ready to depart. Suddenly a roaring sound filled the air, and the entire catacombs began to shake. Their expressions changed as a giant crack split the earth in front of them and a massive stone slowly lifted up. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, and it had finally completely emerged. It was approximately 30 meters tall, inscribed with golden characters. It was a scripture, none other than the Qi condensation manual of the Sublime Spirit Scripture. The three of them stared in shock, especially Meng Hao. After all the trouble he had gone through to acquire the Qi condensation manual, here it was in front of him. He looked at it in a daze. But after examining it further, a strange expression appeared on his face. The first 2 lines of the scripture inscribed on the stele were accurate, but the rest was a complete fabrication. It appeared to be filled abstruse mysteries, but since Meng Hao knew the details of the true scripture, he could tell instantly that this one was false. He hesitated for a moment but didn't say anything. Chen Fan's eyes glittered. He walked forward to stand beneath the stele, as did Xu Qing. They looked at it for some time, then exchanged shocked glance. "We should take this with us," said Xu Qing slowly, "and let the sect leader decide what to do with it." Meng Hao blinked, then nodded as if he completely agreed. When Patriarch Reliance saw this, he laughed, more than pleased. Take it, quickly. Take it out and let as many people know as possible." "Ha ha ha. I'm so smart. I was worried people might break in here during my meditation, so I prepared that false stele. Of course, fearing it might be identified as false, I prepared a little trick. Once it's removed from this place, it will project a sign into the sky which people in all directions will be able to see. Originally it was designed to cause harm, but now, it's going to be quite helpful to me." "Excellent. Excellent." Excitement filled Patriarch Reliance's heart, but then suddenly, his eyes widened. "We must not," said Chen Fan in a dignified voice. After examining the stele carefully, his face filled with resolution. He shook his head, looking at Meng Hao and Xu Qing. "This stele is extremely important. If we take it out, then we would be bringing calamity upon the sect. If an outsider learned of its existence, it could bring about our destruction. Let's each of us use a jade slip to make a copy of the scripture inscribed onto the stele. That way, we can take the contents out, but leave the stele in place. That is the safest method." Chen Fan's face was filled with sincerity and righteousness. What he said was completely selfless in nature, and also took the safety of the sect into consideration. Xu Qing nodded, and Meng Hao, of course, did not disagree. They immediately copied the contents onto their jade slips, then stood onto the altar and made their departure. Patriarch Reliance watched on in shock, then let out a furious howl. "Damn it! Damn it! I will crush this generation's sect leader. How could you let a guy like this into the inner sect? He's completely honest and upright, which I despise. In my day, everyone in the sect was dark and crafty. Take the scripture and keep it secret. That's a real disciple of my sect. As for you, you righteous little pup, you've brought about my death. Why did you have to stop them? Damn it! My cultivation base." Patriarch Reliance was so furious that his body trembled. He ground his teeth, and with an air of abandon, held his breath for a moment, then let out a low shout. He slapped the top of his own head, then spat up a mouthful of blood. The blood transformed into a shapeless blood-red glow, which then began to send a reverberating hum throughout the secret chamber. Amidst the reverberations, the blood-red glow suddenly shot toward Meng Hao and the others as they left the catacombs. As soon as they stepped foot into the main temple hall of the Reliance sect, as soon as Luohua and Grand Elder Ouyang saw them, before they could even open their mouths, the blood-red glow shot out. None of them noticed. Suddenly a thunderous sound rang out, and a bright light spread out, millions of meters in all directions, turning the entire sky bright red. Then, in the middle of it all, amidst a multitude of colors, appeared a strange sign. There were a multitude of characters. Most of the characters weren't able to be seen clearly, but two were. They read, "Sublime Spirit." The sign filled heaven and earth in all directions. The multitudinous characters of the scripture glowed brightly, especially the two characters Sublime Scripture, shining out across the entire state of Zhao. Within the three great sects of the state of Zhao, all the disciples stared up in astonishment at the strange phenomenon. Streak after rainbow-like streak flew from the various closed-door meditation zones as multiple sect patriarchs emerged. The Sublime Spirit Scripture. The Sublime Spirit Scripture has appeared. It appears to be located in the Reliance sect. Could it be that the legendary Qi condensation manual really is there? In the space of a moment, powerful members of several great sects of the Southern Domain emerged from meditation. For the Sublime Spirit Scripture and the Qi condensation manual to appear was an exciting matter. Without hesitation, they shot from the Southern Domain directly toward the state of Zhao. They all feared that if they weren't fast enough, their opportunity could be lost to the other powerful Southern Domain clans, or other sects. In the Southern Domain, the wind had shifted. Prismatic streaks of light shot toward the Reliance sect, as nearly 20 cultivators from the three great sects of the state of Zhao moved into action. The weakest among them was of the foundation establishment stage. 6 were of the core formation stage. They cut through the sky with earth-shattering power.